let's dive back into the morning newspapers. With me here, Janelle Aldred and Harry Phibbs. Good morning to you both again. Janelle, we're starting with you. Front page of the Eye, and HS2 rears its head once again. And this is a story about the fact that some of the homes that were bought initially for the train line are now owned by the government, are being rented out, and the government's making a profit of it.
They're making a profit off it, which hopefully they'll put back into all the money that's been sunk as a lost cause into this project. So they spent around £600 million buying these houses for the HS2, some of them with compulsory buying orders. I remember when I was a baby journalist, and this was BBC Midlands Today, and this was the big story around there because people were protesting, they didn't want to sell their houses. They were then sold, and so now we have this situation where we've got houses that are being rented out to the tune of £9 million profit. I'm not actually adverse to the fact they're renting them out, as long as it goes some way to replacing what's been lost. But there are some properties. They bought one for £637,000 in 2015. That's now empty. It's been dilapidated. It's not being used. Some people are saying should they actually sell these houses now that HS2 is not going ahead? But some people say we need to keep our options open. I really think this HS2 has been a massively failed project, unfortunately, and it's not going to help the people and connect us the way we need to the north the most. So I'm thinking that we need to make a decision. Either HS2 is on the table potentially, or it's not. They sell the houses, but I think it's just such a shame for all those people who were forced to sell their family homes, and now HS2 is not going ahead.
Well, and the story here saying that those former homeowners are absolutely outraged to see them being rental homes. Though, Harry, you wouldn't want even more money wasted by the homes staying completely empty. The question is, if they were bought with compulsory orders, whether there can be some kind of way to offer them back, perhaps even with a tiny discount to the original homeowners.
I think that would be.
I'm sure these people have moved on, and it's still been a terrible blow to their lives. But
and they might well be that they've moved on, bought somewhere else, but I think that it would be a principle of justice to make the offer. Of course, it's better to have the homes being sold or rented than sitting empty indefinitely. But what an astonishing, disastrous project this has been. I think one of the problems is that the costs get so high that it's difficult for people to keep track of. It was going to be 40 billion, and then it was 80 billion and 100 billion. And to think of £1 billion is such a lot, and 100 billion, it's almost just impossible for people to imagine the scale of what they call investment. I mean, the politicians talk about investment. They don't tend to put their own money in. They tend to put our money in, and I don't think it's something that they would have been able to raise much money for as a shrewd investment in the market.
I've always, on top of that, always thought it's easy for the early architects to criticise the cancellation of it. But of course, when they were dreaming it up, it apparently was not just half the price, but about a quarter of the price. So it's sort of a kind of ludicrous story, isn't it? But let's move on to the next story, Harry. You picked out on the front page of the Times. Labour will promise big expansion of childcare.
Yes, and this is, I think, is a popular idea that there should be more nursery schools in primary schools, and that just makes sense, doesn't it? I think you've got the continuity that the child's already settled in the building. I suppose the 10-year-olds might be a bit scary and rough and tough, but perhaps it might be in a different part of the building and gets them used to that. The obvious criticism would be that the Labour Party hasn't said where they'll get the money from for all these nursery schools. I think it would have more credibility if they said that they would take the money from the government's scheme of providing free childcare, supposedly, and then if people find it's frustrating because they're not able to get the childcare within the budget that the government's set, then that's disappointing for them. I think the reason childcare is so expensive is because of all the bureaucracy. If you look at France, for example, the ratios, the childcare staff, I think it's 8 to 1, and here it's about half that, and that means that we get the combination of it being very expensive and also low paid for the childcare provider. So I think there's a lot of sort of well-intentioned bureaucracy which has made that it's not viable in many places to have childcare.
Yeah, we'll see if we get more sort of detail on this in the weeks ahead and whether it becomes a key dividing line ahead of the election. We'll be talking to Emily Thornberry, by the way, next hour. Janelle, what story have we gone for next here from, I believe, The Telegraph?
It's a really interesting story. BBC feeding viewers a steady diet of woke bias, apparently. There's been some campaigners who've done a campaign into the BBC and say that they're too woke. I mean, I always find this a really interesting conversation, that a campaign which is campaigning for free speech is upset that people are saying things that they think are too woke. And I find this kind of, it's like a double argument, really, in a sense. So they're saying that the BBC did this impartiality plan in the wake of the BBC scandal over trust, but are now doing things that they think aren't fair, like portraying illegal immigration as sympathetic light, they're saying. The BBC say, they've handpicked a few examples and they've cherry-picked them, and it doesn't really constitute true analysis. But I do think, as we think about, the so-called culture wars, I do find it very interesting that anything that apparently on the right they don't like is now woke, and that we're talking about things, people talk about not whitewashing history, but then they're annoyed that people are talking about colonialism and slavery in that same next breath. So it's a double argument that I don't really think actually holds much weight as to whether or not you think the BBC are woke or not. But it seems like whatever side you're on, the BBC is kind of wrong. So maybe they're getting it right if everyone's annoyed with them.
Well, that's definitely true. When you've done it an interview well when everyone's shouting at you on Twitter. But Harry, what's your take on this one? Have you seen the latest Doctor? I've never been a big Doctor Who fan, I must say.
No, I think it is a tiresome if, instead of just getting on with entertaining us and telling a story, that there's an agenda that's pushed in, sort of telling us what to think, and that is irritating, whether or not you might agree with the message they would have put forward. I mean, one example they've got here is Doctor Who is the pushing the transgenderism, which I do object to. I do think that normalising transgenderism, you've got children at quite vulnerable age. Maybe you've got gay teenagers being told, well, you're not gay, you're actually in the wrong body, and you should you should change your sex. I mean, I think that these can be very damaging messages to be pushing for children, and I think normalising it is something that I would be concerned about.
The extent to which that is actually pushed, though, I'm not sure in this episode. I haven't seen it, but. Anyway, should we move on to the next one? And this is back to the same front page we were looking at earlier of the Times, but different part of it, and the photograph drawing your attention, and the sad obituary as well.
Yes, so Jacques Delors, a hugely important figure for the European Union. When we joined in the 1970s, it was called the Common Market, and it was regarded as a bit of a club, and there'd be some trade and a bit of stuff about farming and the price of fish. But its ambition, particularly from Jacques Delors, though he wasn't alone, of having a sort of European state, a common government, meant it was something that was quite different, and that infuriated Margaret Thatcher, who said she won these elections, and now she was having this effort to put socialism in through the back Delors boom boom, and that was, so he was obviously very effective. But I do think that he went so far that probably he was responsible for Brexit. That people who were thinking, well, sovereignty is just a theoretical thing, doesn't mean very much. If they then found the European Union was getting so much power that they reacted against it, and I think that probably was responsible for Brexit, and responsible for quite a bit of a backlash we're seeing in other countries against the European Union. Well,
that's quite, I mean, it's not solely responsible. There were lots of factors, as we well know, and he was one of many architects of centralisation, which most people would see as a big success. From the people that he represented.
No, his team would have thought he was a very significant figure. Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, and Jacques Delors, who sadly passed away yesterday, of course, former president of the European Commission. Guys, we're going to have to leave it there, but we'll see you again next half for more fun and games from today's newspaper.